everyone, it's Jean, and I'm coming at you with my second book talk that I've ever put on this channel. My last book talk was like 2 years ago, and I don't know why I never filmed another one. I think it was because they take a while to edit, and I just haven't been reading a ton of books lately. I've been more obsessed with video games right now, but I did recently finish the book People Like Us by Dana Mealy. I guess that's how you pronounce her name. I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry. I finished the book yesterday and I loved it. I finished the book yesterday and my thoughts about it were just kind of all over the place. There was a sort of adrenaline rush after finishing the story, and then I just couldn't really put my thoughts together, so I kind of gave it 24 hours to just kind of sit on the book, think about it, and yeah. So now here I am and I'm ready to talk about it. The first part of this book talk is going to be a non-spoiler review, so if you haven't read it, don't worry about getting spoiled yet. And then the second part will contain spoilers, but I will alert you when I switch over to the spoiler part. So first of all, let me just explain what the book People Like Us is about. So the book People Like Us is about a girl named Kay who goes to a really prestigious boarding school called Bates Academy. And Kay right now is pretty much the queen bee of this group of pretty mean girls. She pretty much has her life going perfect for her at the time. Like, she's captain of the soccer team and she's a senior and she might get a scholarship, and she's kind of depending on this soccer scholarship in order just to make her parents happy and in order to go to college. And on top of that, she's also a scholarship student, so she did not pay her way into the school like the other girls have done. So she's kind of seen as like the middle class girl amongst this huge group of rich girls. However, Kay's life changes completely when a girl at her school is murdered. It's not a girl she knew personally, but Kay does realize that this girl goes to her school. And Kay suddenly finds herself caught in the middle of this murder mystery. The day after she finds the girl's body, whose name is Jessica, she receives an email from someone who is pretending to be Jessica, who has this revenge blog. And basically she threatens Kay to do all of these things to sort of tear apart her friend group in order to keep her dark past from being revealed to people that could potentially give her an athletic scholarship. So Kay pretty much is forced to destroy her friend group in order to save herself. And in the meantime, she's trying to solve this murder mystery. So the book pretty much has a lot going on. It's very suspenseful, and that was one reason why I sort of decided to read it, was because I do like to read things that are suspenseful, especially when I'm not really in the mood for reading, because books with suspense keep me going. And this book definitely keeps you guessing, and it keeps you turning the page, and you definitely don't want to put it down. It's also a pretty quick read, so like, you could easily just spend the entire weekend reading this book because it's very addicting. One thing that I was a little bit hesitant about when I saw this book for the first time was thinking that it was going to be a very cliche boarding school story, rich kid drama kind of thing. But it actually is very complex and it's very unique, and it's definitely unlike any other contemporary book I've read before. The characters all have many layers, and each character kind of has their own little secret that they're hiding, and so you're kind of kept guessing about what exactly each character's past is like. On top of that, Kay also deals with being bisexual and possibly being in love with her best friend Bree, while Bree is sort of caught between being in love with Kay but also being in love with somebody else. One thing I really liked about the queer motif in this book is that it's not the main source of all of the drama in the book, but it is definitely a major part. And so I really liked that they made being queer just kind of this casual thing and not something that has to be the center of every single story, and I really enjoyed having that aspect also thrown into the book. And also it made like same-sex love, just very casual, and I really liked that there wasn't that sort of drama added about having homosexual relationships. So overall, I gave this book about 3.5 stars, just because while the plot line was very good, I do feel like the ending was just kind of weird, and I'll discuss that in the spoilery section. But I just want to explain my reasoning behind not giving this book 5 stars. And I really did like the book, but it definitely was not just like, oh my gosh, this is the best book I've ever read kind of thing. That being said though, I did still really like the book. Overall, if you haven't read this book yet, I highly recommend it. If the plot catches your attention, then I would definitely say go out and get yourself a copy, or you can get a book from your library if you don't really want to spend the money, because I did think it was a good book, and I also thought it was a cool way to kick off the summer. I'm not a big contemporary reader, so it's kind of hard for me to find contemporary books that really grab my attention, but this book was really, really good, and I would definitely read another book by this author. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the non-spoiler part of this review. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I would turn this video off now, because now I'm about to go into the spoiler review. If you can hear my family fighting through this, I'm gonna put this all on YouTube. This is my life at home. Okay, so I kind of want to keep the spoiler version of this review kind of short, so I'm pretty much just gonna go through the pros and cons of what I liked about the book and what I didn't like about the book. Okay, so as far as what I liked about this book, one thing I really liked was the secrets of all of the characters. I thought it was really interesting how every character kind of had their own little secret, and that was sort of a really fun extra piece of that mystery, was just figuring out what everybody's hiding. And I really thought that that was a cool way to keep the reader engaged in the story without necessarily just focusing on the mystery, because you're also focusing on the secrets. I also really liked the revenge blogs, was figuring out each little poem and trying to figure out what each person is hiding. I would always try to figure it out before Kay did, which was cool. Another pro that I really liked was Nola. Just the character of Nola. I thought she was a really cool villain, actually, just because Nola is definitely not obvious to anybody. When I was reading this book, like, you really don't know that Nola is the villain at first. Later on though, and it was mainly when Kay went up with Nola for Thanksgiving, when I started to think that maybe Nola might be the villain. And so I thought that was just a really cool, suspenseful part, because you're kind of focusing on two different characters in the novel. You're kind of focusing on Spencer and Greg, and for a while I actually thought it was Spencer for the longest time, but then you kind of start shifting your eyes back towards Nola, and so I thought that was a really cool thing to have, and I thought that Nola was just a really well constructed character. I also really enjoyed the mystery. There was the whodunit scenario, but there was also a lot more mystery just with the revenge blog, and you're also trying to figure out about Kay's past. You don't know a lot about Kay, which was kind of cool. I do like reading stories sometimes where we don't always know about the main character, and the main character may not be trustworthy. A small part of me did think that Kay actually did kill Jessica, and we just didn't know that. And that was really cool, just having the constant mystery of the entire book. Every character is not really who they seem. It was really cool to figure that mystery out as the story progresses. Another thing I really enjoyed was just the setting of the entire story. I don't know why, but I have a thing for like boarding school mysteries and like rich kid drama, so I really enjoyed the entire setting of just Bates Academy and the town in general. The campus of her boarding school just seems very well built. It was almost like a fantasy novel in the sense that there is world building in the book, and I really enjoyed just learning more about like Bates Academy and its like weird traditions and weird quirks. Also, the principal was really cool, and so I kind of liked how Bates sort of became its own little world, because in a way boarding school is like its own little world, especially in high school, since kids can't really like leave the school. So that's pretty much it for the pros. Now I'm going to talk about some of the things that I really didn't like about this book, or things that I would change. One thing that I thought was really weird was just the motives of some of the people who were accused of killing Jessica. Like, obviously Kay did have the motive of being the ex-girlfriend, but to me that just didn't seem very reasonable. I mean, I could see Spencer doing it, but like Kay, I mean, it just didn't really seem that realistic to me. And Nola's motive to me was just incredibly unrealistic. Like, the reason why Nola decided to kill Jessica and have this huge revenge plot against Kay was because of the whole Dear Valentine incident. And to me, the Dear Valentine incident was not really all that bad. Obviously, it was a form of harassment, but to me, it wasn't reason to get Kay in prison or whatever. It was just something that just didn't make sense to me. Now, Nola obviously seemed a little bit off, so that may be something that contributed to her reasoning to construct this whole thing against Kay. But to be honest, I didn't really see Nola's past as a reason to go murder somebody and do all this. It just didn't seem very realistic to me. It kind of seemed like the author just kind of wanted to create a motive at the very last minute. Another thing that kind of annoyed me was just Kay's dryness. She talks like a very dry character, and I guess this may be because I only read the audiobook. I never actually read the text version, but it just seems like Kay was like this very flat kind of character, and it kind of took a while for me to realize how complex she was, because when the story just started out, I was thinking like, oh gosh, this is gonna be like one of those like super dry reads, and I think it was just because Kay's voice was just so dry and dumbed down in general. And even through all of the huge scenes in the book, like Maddie's death, Kay didn't really seem to react very much. She was just kind of like, okay, she's dead. And I was thinking, this voice doesn't seem to match the situation. There doesn't seem to be enough like dramatic effect in this. Also, just some of the reasoning behind a lot of the characters did not seem to make any sense. Mainly just because a lot of the people seemed incredibly dumb to do some of the things that they did. Like, for example, Kay constantly lying to the police. To me, she had a pretty straight story. Maybe she didn't have the best alibi, but if she had just been honest, I think it would have been better off for her. I also just think that Bree deciding to wear a recording device on her and try to get a confession out of Kay just didn't seem very reasonable, because there really wasn't a lot of probable cause that she even killed Jessica. The substance was there, but the reasoning and the why was just not consistent to me with the actions. Also, can we just talk about the really dumb investigator? Throughout the entire story, this investigator, whose name escapes me, just seemed to be targeting Kay and trying to like make up a confession. For example, there's the part where Kay mentions something about blades, where she says, well, maybe it was Greg because he knew that Jessica hated blades and Jessica was cut with a blade, and the investigator is like, well, how do you know it was a blade? Like, were you there? How do you know? It could have been anything. To be honest, that was a really weak argument to begin with. If the investigator was trying to target Kay, it wasn't working, because obviously if you see slit wrists, you're going to think it was a blade. Like, that was the first thing that went to my head. I was like, oh, it was a blade. Nobody's gonna sit there and look closely at the body unless it was like clearly shards of glass hanging out of her. Also, the investigator seemed to just waste so much time on Kay, and it just didn't make any sense because clearly Kay didn't do it. It seemed like a dumb way to investigate a murder. Also, the investigator targeted Kay about like the dead cat, and to me that just also did not make any sense. I'm an animal lover, but no police would start investigating a dead cat. It was a weird thing. Another thing that really disappointed me, like I said earlier, was the ending to the entire story. So we find out that Nola did it, and that part was good, you know, figuring out that Nola is like this pathological liar and she's plotted this whole revenge thing, and her parents are like super sorry to Kay about it. And then we find out about Kay's past, and that was where things started to get kind of annoying. We learned that Kay, first of all, is not the most innocent girl in the world, which made sense because Kay, I felt like, kind of displayed herself as this like super nice girl, even though everybody knew that she wasn't. And that was cool, but it was mainly just like the last line where she goes into the lake and plunges into oblivion. Obviously, the author was trying to leave some sort of cliffhanger for all of us, but I am assuming that she committed suicide or that she drowned herself, and to me that was just kind of a really bad ending. Like, it seems like it was just kind of thrown in there, no reasoning really behind it. I mean, yes, by the time the investigation was over, Kay's life still sucked, but like, I feel like that wouldn't be a reason for her to go kill herself. Also, I feel like Kay would have thought about her parents too, in the sense that, you know, her parents had just lost their son and now they were going to lose their daughter. It was weird to me. And to me, that last line, if it was a suicide, it just didn't make any sense with the plot. It seemed like completely unrelated to everything that had just happened before. And so I felt like the ending for that reason was just not very good. I feel like the book should have just ended after Nola's issue, and it should have had something else with like Kay moving back home or something. But yeah, so I was not too big of a fan of the ending, which is a shame because I liked the book from the beginning to the middle. It's just when we got to the ending, it just kind of fizzled out. Other than those things though, I really did enjoy the story. I would totally give it 3.5 stars, and I would totally recommend it to anybody who likes mystery novels. If you have read this book, then let me know what you thought of it down in the comments. It's not a very talked about book right now, so I just really want to talk about it with certain people, especially the ending. I want to talk about the ending line, what the author meant by that. But yeah. So that concludes this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking the button here or here. And if you want to see the last video I posted, you can click the link here. And I will see you guys in my next video. Goodbye!